It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Jim Grieve, Assistant Deputy Minister, Early Learning Division, Ministry of Education. Jim Grieve was appointed to his role in November 2009 to lead the provincial implementation of full-day kindergarten for 4- and 5-year-olds. With the transfer of responsibility for childcare to the Early Learning Division, Mr. Grieve led the work of creating a seamless early learning experience for children from birth onward. His compassionate advocacy for early learning began as a founding member of the Council of Early Child Development. Over the last 15 years, along with Dr. Fraser Mustard, Dr. Dan Oford, Dr. Magdalena Janus, and talented leaders in early childhood development, Mr. Grieve has worked to develop strong multi-sectorial initiatives to help young children and families in Canada thrive. He chaired 2 highly recognized Success by 6 organizations in Ottawa and Peel. He holds a master's degree from OISE University of Toronto and undergraduate degrees from York University and Victoria College, University of Toronto. Following an exemplary career as a teacher, school administrator, and superintendent in the North York Board of Education, Mr. Grieve served as Director of Education in Ottawa-Carleton before moving to the Director of Education role with Peel District School Board, Canada's second-largest school board. A highly visible and approachable leader, he has visited communities in every part of Ontario to view exemplary programs and meet leaders of Best Smart Networks, childcare, municipalities, and education to engage early learning partners. In 2013, the International Association of Business Communicators named Mr. Grieve Communicator of the Year. In 2014, the Ministry of Education presented Mr. Grieve with his Realm Lifetime Achievement Award. Please join me in welcoming Jim Grieve.
Well, Madam Chancellor, Madam President, members of the Platform Party, George Brown graduates, you're there? Special guests, parents, family members back there. Let's hear from you out there. And really, especially those whom we are delighted to celebrate today. Students now, maybe students in the future as well, but certainly graduates today. Annie, Sego, Boujou, bonjour. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. It's a great pleasure to be here. I am honored to be celebrating this event with you. And when I was invited to speak, I sort of contemplated what I would say to my younger self if I were graduating today. Sort of going back in time, back to the future. So my remarks, I know, are not going to change your path, but certainly some of you, no doubt, will be continuing on with some post-secondary studies. But if you have well and truly graduated, tonight is really the start of something brand new. You know, a whole new career, stepping off into the, quote, grown-up world, or at least a beginning to that. And I don't know whether you've been following this or not, but apparently 30 is the new 20. Good news. There is, there is brain research demonstrating that the adolescent brain, which we used to think sort of peaked about age 18, we once believed that anyway, continues to evolve well into the 20s. This is good news for most of us. And from a neurological perspective, adolescence is now being defined as age 26 to 28 at least. So apparently 30 is the new 20. It's good news. Now listen, this is really, really cool because I'm about to bring everybody into this. Of course, at the same time, we're hearing that 40 is the new 30. Also, 50 and 60 is the new 30. This is good news. So as baby boomers age, they're generally, hopefully, more healthy and active than ever, and they're acting like 30-year-olds. I'm sorry, we do. So apparently everybody in this auditorium is 30. So that includes the graduates, your parents, and the faculty, and yes, me. Good. But definitely graduating and learning that you're the new 30 means you're moving forward in life in many, many fine ways. And you have an opportunity to decide that you will actively take charge of your own development from here on, rather than just letting things happen. Here's a little story. The late writer David Foster Wallace told a story about these two young fish swimming along, and they meet an older fish moving in the opposite direction, who nods at them and says, "Nice to see you. Good morning. How's the water?" And the two young fish keep on going in their own way and pause briefly about 30 seconds later. And the young fish, one of them says to the other, "What the heck is water?" Okay, my wife didn't get that last night, but let me build on it. You'll get this. The single most important thing we need to know about ourselves is that very thing we always take for granted, because it's so much a part of us we don't even think about it. And that's our values. Your values, mine. Values, unlike sort of preferences and options and attitudes, remain unchanged throughout our lives, pretty much. In fact, Environics has conducted decades of research both here and in Canada and other countries to verify this. They found that throughout people's lives, their values really do not change, but rather they intensify. In other words, we become more and more like ourselves as we progress through our lives. We just crystallize. And that makes sense. We are who we are throughout our entire lives. And those of us who've gone back to graduations and gone back to commencements in the past and come back to university or college that we graduated from find people really have not changed those core values. So, at some time in the future, you may think back with a little bit of chagrin that you once had the song Baby Baby on heavy rotation in your iPod. Or perhaps that you danced once the Gangnam Style, just saying. Or that you wore jeggings or harem pants or any of those passing fads, which is what they are. They're not necessarily your values. But throughout your life, regrets related to your values will only come in the form of not being faithful to them, or making choices that don't match your fundamental understandings of who you are and of what you want to make of your own life. You're in control of that. The thing is, I can't tell you what that's going to be, and you wouldn't expect me to, and neither can anyone else do that for you. Consciously making your choices and decisions while being true to your own value system, that's what's important. That's the difference between merely drifting along day to day in that sort of stream of adult existence, and although that term day to day may not make much sense to you right now, it sure will soon enough. It's the difference between drifting, or instead of being aware of the water, and swimming in your own direction. That's where I bring those fish back. It's not possible to go back and change or trade our genetic gifts, or to go back and make different choices of our high school or college years. You can't choose to have a different childhood. We have to work with what we have, each of us. And it's about taking an active role in your own continued growth from here on, defining yourself and deciding what matters most to you in your own life, defining yourself on your own terms rather than letting others define it for you. Your choice of vocation is one of those defining decisions, and I'm so delighted to be here at George Brown with people who have chosen to serve children and adults in the way you have. You've made professional choices. Yeah. Just an aside, I've often confessed to Patricia Chorney-Weaver, who's just over here, that one of these days, after years working in this field, I would be I'd make a really good ECE, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm working on it. So you are going to go out in that world, and you're going to find that you'll continue to make professional and personal choices that help you tell your story, that help you define yourself to others. And I promise that each one of you has the ability to surprise even yourself with your own story as you grow and develop. I know that because I've had so many opportunities in my own life to do that with my own experiences. So, years from now, if you remember one thing I've said tonight, other than the fact that we're all 30, you're going to thank me one of those days for being 30. You will. It's that your values are foundational and your potential is boundless. And it's such a pleasure for those of us sitting up here to look at you and just feel the potential. It's just awesome. So to quote one of my very favorite philosophers, here we go, Winnie the Pooh. "This is far too important to be taken seriously," says Winnie. "I meet regularly with my staff at the ministry, and I ask them, 'What brings you joy?' It's a good question to ask yourself regularly. A good question. Your life is far too important to be taken seriously, to spend in dull work that fails to fulfill your life with value, meaning, and joy. Honestly, the professions you are choosing and that whole career area you've chosen through George Brown experience is going to bring you huge moments of joy and great satisfaction. As an educator, I've worked almost my entire career directly with children. Now, as the Assistant Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Education Early Years Division, I take every opportunity to get out of Queen's Park and travel across Ontario and beyond and sit on the floor with babies and toddlers and infants and school-age kids. Why? Because that's where the real world is. That is where we are growing the best for Ontario in these programs. So I'd be remiss if I didn't encourage you to retain the best of your childhood. Remember what it was like. For those of you in early childhood education, your work will certainly make that easier to do, but each of you, I hope, will stay connected to the joy, curiosity, wonder, whimsy, and imagination that seemed so easy and so natural when you were a young child. So, back to the wonderful comments from the Dean and from the Chancellor. Continue to question, to learn, to grow, to stretch, to reach, to marvel, to be aware of wonder, to let yourself be surprised and amazed and overjoyed by life every single day. Finally, in conclusion, it was the 20th century novelist Charles Dickens, whom we know and love, who said, "A word in earnest is as good as an entire speech." So, let me wrap up by saying one final, earnest, heartfelt word. Congratulations. Thank you.